West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
You may remember Tricia Cotham. She is the state representative in North Carolina who abruptly switched from Democratic to Republican this past spring. Cotham's switch handed the GOP gerrymandered state legislature there a veto-proof majority. It allowed them to ram through a 12-week abortion ban that was opposed by the state's Democratic governor. The ban not only takes away the rights of pregnant women in that state, but it also hurts people from other southern states with abortion bans who had been traveling to North Carolina for healthcare. And this was all possible because of party-switching Tricia Cotham, who voted with her fellow Republicans for the ban. It was weird because several years before, in 2015, Cotham drew national attention for sharing her own abortion story on the floor of the North Carolina State House.
My first pregnancy ended in an induced physician-assisted miscarriage. While I served in this chamber, my doctor told me that this pregnancy would likely not be viable, and that if I did not take swift medical action, my life and any hope of future babies would be in severe danger. Abortion is a deeply personal decision. It should not be a political debate. My womb and my uterus is not up for your political grab.
So what on earth led that person, someone who spoke out passionately for abortion rights and just ran last year as a pro-choice Democrat, to suddenly betray her voters? Two New York Times reporters did a deep dive on the very suspicious party switching of Tricia Cotham that, quote, blew up North Carolina politics. Kate Kelly, a Washington correspondent for the New York Times, was on that story, and she joins me now. Kate, thanks so much for coming on the show. You report that some big-name North Carolina party figures encouraged Cotham to run in the primary in 2022, but they weren't Democratic Party figures, were they?
No, the majority leader of the Republican Party then and now, John Bell, spoke to Tricia Cotham before she filed for the primary last March and encouraged her to run. And we also learned that the Speaker of the House, Republican Tim Moore, who was Speaker last term and is now, encouraged her to run along the way, although he said he hadn't talked to her before the primary. So we know that from the very get-go, GOP sort of deep-rooted interests within North Carolina were backing Tricia Cotham. They say they didn't know that she was going to switch parties. They say they regarded her as a centrist Democrat in a redrawn district that was going to go to a Democrat regardless. So they wanted someone who would reach across the aisle. And to be fair, that is some of her history, is sort of collaborative impulses with Republicans on certain issues. However, you're very right to point out that she ran on a pro-choice agenda. She ran as an ally to the LGBTQ community. She ran as someone that was going to give local sheriffs autonomy when it came to going along with ICE, among many other policy positions that she has now effectively reversed with her votes, commentary, and other signals.
Yes, and you guys write how Tricia Cotham's victory in November helped Democrats lock in enough seats to prevent by a single vote a Republican supermajority in the state house. And then, just 3 months after she took office, as we've discussed, she switches parties. I wonder, what has been the reaction in her district?
Bitterness, betrayal, anger, and, she's had some pretty awful things to contend with since April 5th when she switched. I mean, death threats, her tires slashed, her car keyed, abusive and sort of violent messages. So, none of this is good. But people are extremely bitter and feeling betrayed. I mean, she was the GOAT in a sort of stand-up comedic Saturday Night Live type thing in Charlotte called Charlotte Squawks that my co-writer David Perlmutt attended. That didn't even make the story because there's so many aspects to the sort of rage and frustration in that community. And part of it, Mandy, I think, is that she really hasn't fully explained her change of heart. Her party switch speech on April 5th essentially boiled down to there's too much groupthink in the Democratic Party. They're too process-oriented. I don't recognize them. And they're nasty. They've been mean to me. And, throughout the reporting of the story, I really tried to get her on the phone. I tried to get her to elaborate on some of the very specific policy disputes that drove her away. But I have not been able to shake that loose, and nor has any other reporter in the North Carolina press corps that I've seen.
Well, you mentioned meanness. I just want to talk about that. You quote her former campaign consultant saying that she told him, quote, "The Democrats don't like me. The Republicans have helped me out a lot and been nice to me." We often try to reduce political battles, Kate, to ideology or policy, but a lot of the time it's ego, it's anger, it's personal stuff. And I feel like we see that with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, too, in the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reaction that I've heard from a lot of people in the last day or so, is that this seemed like it was about petty personal rivalries. It was about a feeling of personal injury. And it's interesting, the campaign consultant you mentioned told me that there was almost a very Trumpian kind of narcissistic approach here. Like, everyone's against me. They used to be for me. She even before she switched stances, she was frustrated at not getting, for example, the endorsement of Planned Parenthood South Atlantic. But she also did not attend the board meetings with that group that are required to get a candidate endorsement. And ironically, when she came into office in January, she soon co-sponsored a bill that would have codified Roe versus Wade in North Carolina. Now, think about that. I mean, you're quite right to quote her famous floor speech from 2015 that's very much of a pro-choice clarion call. But as recently as late January of this year, she was a co-sponsor on a Roe bill. And within, 3-4 months, she reverses her stance on what had proved to be a critical issue, because this state was very much a destination, like a very rare oasis of access for abortion within the Deep South up until July 1st.
So I got to ask, Kate, in your reporting, did you get to the bottom of all this, what you highlight there? Because she's a progressive, pro-choice Democrat when she's in the state house before. Then she goes out of office. She co-founds a lobbying firm where one of her partners was a major donor to state Republicans and also president of a company that built charter schools, which she was once against. She comes back into office as a Democrat only briefly and then switches to the Republicans. You report that Republicans were pushing her to run. So am I allowed to speculate and say, hold on, was she a Republican the whole time when she was coming back to office? Do we have evidence of that?
Well, that's the open question. I mean, I can't say more than I have learned through the reporting. I mean, we know that Republicans encouraged her to run, and at least one prominent one encouraged her before she ran. We also report that some of her biggest donors on the campaign trail were two PACs, one related to dental professionals in North Carolina, another related to nursing home facilities that give almost entirely or predominantly to Democrats. We know that on the very first day of this term, Mindy, which was January 11th, she was one of the escorts to bring the House Speaker to the dais. And the other Democrats in that group, one was the minority leader from the opposing party, obviously. The other two had longer tenures and were regarded as close to the Speaker. So there were all these signs that she was at a minimum friendly with Republicans.
And yet, Kate, sorry to jump in, we're out of time. And yet, she switched. And we still don't know why, but your reporting has helped us understand.
It is Wednesday, the 2nd of August of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Okay, well, we have a lot of them out there trying to, force us into their belief systems. One might call that indoctrination. Would one not? One would. I love how, there's no other way to describe them than neo-Nazi fascists like DeSantis, who complain that there are books that kids are reading that are indoctrinating them into woke, whatever that means. And we know what it means. They want to use the N-word, but they're going the Atwater route for now. That is indoctrinating them into apparently American citizenship, and that's a bad thing in a neo-Nazi fascist mind. So they will replace American civics with Dennis PragerU's admitted educational program, in which he does admit that they are there to pretty much indoctrinate kids into a belief system that is wholly separated and opposite of what they have learned previous, or at least their parents, hopefully, about American citizenship. Okay. Well, never before in the history of the United States did we have anything other than a peaceful transfer of power. And now we're supposed to believe that January 6th never happened. Donald Trump truly believed he had won, so therefore everything is okay. Gotta let him have it then. Okay. And yet, when they're out there complaining about all of us using the excuse of diminished capacity, how dare we? The Crazy Joe Bananas defense is not going to work. He's on tape admitting that he wants violence. They were going to use violence. They were trying to get Black Lives Matter and Antifa to go out and perpetuate mass violence, so then the Insurrection Act could be enforced, and he wouldn't leave office. That's Clark's plan, and we already knew about it, or not necessarily knew about it. Let's just put it this way. They never hid what they were going to do. Trump never said that he was going to give up power peacefully. When he was debating Hillary, he admitted it as such. The only way he would accept the election is if he won. The only way. So I remember we were pretty much encouraging each other, whatever you do, don't go out there in the streets and protest, because the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the cops themselves are going to egg you on, and the next thing you know, they're going to blame it on you, and we're going to have the Insurrection Act foisted upon our heads, and then you know what else will happen. So Clark and these others, with their fever dreams of conspiracy, expected Black Lives Matter and Antifa to go out there and pretty much do what they expected them to do, and then they could call in the National Guard, and the next thing you know, we're martial law. And it wasn't just people who were like on the front lines of this. We were talking about it everywhere. It was written about on Daily Kos. I mean, people's personal blogs. It said, boy, sure seems like Trump wants to use the Insurrection Act to stay in office. And now we find out once again we were right. All right. I just got to say for myself, and this is no brag, I'm batting 1,000%. And that's impossible in baseball. But I have been batting 1,000% since high school in determining the malfeasance, criminality, and fascism that is arising in our body politic. I know, we always had a bit of criminality and stuff. Okay. That's what we were sent here for. We were crooks. Get us out of there. Put them on a prison island. North America. Heard a really good joke the other day. Actually, it was really, I don't know, I kind of liked it because we have an affinity with Australia, you know. But guy says that he'd really like to go to Australia, and you know, does he need a visa, and can he, you know, accelerate getting his passport? And the Australian representative at the embassy, and Australian embassy said, well, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And the applicant then stuttered and said, is that still required? I don't know. It's a dad joke, but I liked it. Okay, we do have a curated show for you, in spite of the fact that all this great news about indictments, and now they want to change venues because they don't want black people. Oh, we already have these black judges, and they're going to have black jurors. It's not going to be fair. Just don't call it racism, bigotry, and the use of woke is really the N-word. Okay? Just don't. But we do have a curated show, and what is that we have? Starting at the top, yes, we had Mehdi Hassan explaining how, well, the reporters from the New York Times who delved into this little scandal. Tricia Cotham, the North Carolina lawmaker who switched parties and handed the GOP gerrymandered state legislature a veto-proof majority, was courted by top GOP officials before the election. And I think that she might have been a Republican all along. Okay? I would also add, I take no glee in hearing that, you know, she's had her tires slashed, her car keyed, and terrible threats of violence upon her person and family. There's no place for us to do that. So just don't. But I will say, wow, this seems like perpetuating an election fraud. Maybe someone should be held to account for this as well. Maybe. On the rest of the menu, as we continue in the Bistro Cafe, a Texas man was found not guilty after he was ticketed for feeding homeless people in Houston. A federal judge ruled that it would violate Idaho medical providers' free speech rights to sanction them for referring patients to out-of-state abortion services. And a grand jury charged 2 top Michigan Republicans in connection with voting machine tampering during the 2020 election ballot count. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a bill aimed at halting criticism of Pakistani intelligence figures is expected to become law. And the United States will put forward a UN Security Council resolution that will authorize Kenya to lead a multinational police force to help combat gangs in Haiti. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. To the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, because it really does help us put a big dent in the ever-increasing dollar amount of the bills and other sundry costs that it costs to run this powerhouse of resistance. Now, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we're able to pool that patronage with other patronageurs or Patreons. And like I said, that puts a big dent in paying down these bills. So thank you for your generosity. And I got to tell you, we need it now more than ever. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, I think we're still on Twitter. We were there today, though we will be bugging out soon. But you can find us on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, and elsewhere at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, and also Blue Sky at Justice Putnam. In fact, you can find me at Justice Putnam most everywhere. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime. And that's where the actual reportage can be found. So you can pick those up on my social media platforms. Or not mine, but the platforms that my social media is on. And therefore, you can then actually read the real articles. Please, you can do it. You can also follow the show on Twitter, though it's just a placemat. I apologize. We'll get on the other platforms soon. But we are on Twitter at Cookbook West, and do please pick up podcasts by way of Spreakers, or not Spreaker anymore, by way of Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found, just not on Stitcher anymore because SiriusXM sucks. There. I got it out. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of Raw Story by David Edwards. A Texas man was found not guilty after he was ticketed for feeding homeless people in Houston. Philip Picone opted to go to trial after being ticketed while volunteering for Food Not Bombs, a group that has been feeding homeless people near the public library in downtown Houston for 20 years. The city had outlawed setting up feeding stations, initially citing public health and safety concerns after violent incidents near the library. It asked that charities move their services to the old Houston Police Headquarters. And the jury unanimously found Picone not guilty. Picone received his ticket on March 3rd and is the first of dozens of volunteers to go to trial. Attorney Paul Kabush represents him and 37 other volunteers. The city of Houston defended the charges in a statement. The city of Houston, I'm sorry, I had to put my glasses on. The city of Houston intends to vigorously pursue violations of its ordinance relating to feeding of the homeless. City Attorney Arturno Michael said, "It is a health and safety issue for the protection of Houston's residents. There have been complaints and incidents regarding the congregation of homeless people around the library, even during off hours." Now, Kabosh told Fox 26, the local Fox affiliate in Houston, before the hearing, "What I'm hoping for is vindication. I'm hoping for not guilty. If you're trying to affect the lives of homeless and trying to make the situation better, you can't do that by attacking the Samaritan. The law is not about the homeless. It is about the Samaritan." Gene Johnson and Ed Comenda of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A federal judge has ruled that it would violate Idaho medical providers' free speech rights to sanction them for referring patients to out-of-state abortion services, rejecting the state attorney general's interpretation of Idaho's abortion ban. Idaho's law makes it illegal to perform or attempt to perform an abortion, a crime punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison. It also makes it unlawful for healthcare professionals to assist in the provision or attempted provision of one, with the penalty being the suspension or loss of their medical license. Republican Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador wrote a letter to a conservative lawmaker in March in which he opined that referring a patient to legal abortion services in other states would constitute assisting in an abortion or attempted abortion, and thus would require the suspension of the health professional's license. Planned Parenthood and several medical providers sued the next month, arguing such a restriction would violate the First Amendment right to free speech. Healthcare providers are not restricted from referring patients out of state for prenatal care or other treatment, they noted. The case is one of two targeting Idaho's strict abortion laws. A separate lawsuit challenges a new Idaho measure making it illegal to help minors get an abortion without parental consent. Attorneys general from 20 states filed a brief yesterday, Tuesday, urging the court to block it. Of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A former Michigan lawmaker and a losing candidate for state attorney general were charged with felonies yesterday, Tuesday, as part of an investigation into the improper acquisition of voting machines. Special prosecutor D.J. Hilson, since last year, has been looking into efforts by a group of conservatives to persuade election clerks to give them voting machines as they attempted to prove the 2020 presidential election had been wrongly called for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. The group never turned up any proof, and courts in dozens of cases across the country ruled that the election was properly decided. Former Attorney General candidate Matthew DePerno, a Republican, was charged with improper possession of a voting machine, conspiracy to unlawfully possess a voting machine, conspiracy to gain unauthorized access to a computer system, and willfully damaging a voting machine. Former State Representative Dare Rundon, another Republican, was charged with conspiracy to unlawfully possess a voting machine and using false pretenses with the intent to defraud. Both were arraigned and then released. All right, the wheels of justice continue to grind inexorably. Though slow it is, they grind nonetheless. All right, let us now go to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, build it and they will come. So what's needed to construct an epic film? High-stakes events are good, extraordinary characters a must, complex and nuanced situations help, add some A-list actors and a world-class director and you're pretty much there. And such is what we have with Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, based on Burton Sherwin's '05 biography. Saying that Oppenheimer was complex is true enough, but what's examined here is his intersection with complex events. Innovation from military necessity goes back to the catapult, and when there appeared the potential for a game-changing device from what had been the mostly theoretical sphere of particle physics, those in this field were suddenly in the limelight in an existential race not to be second to develop it. And this race was occurring against a backdrop of competing visions for societal organization, capitalism versus communism, which precipitated a paranoid and delusional response from every part of the American power structure. It's onto the shoulders of Cillian Murphy that playing Oppie, as he was called, falls. Oppie the physicist, the family man, the womanizer, the politician, and Oppie the potential destroyer of worlds. And he soars in this role of a lifetime with support from Downey Jr., Damon, Pugh, and Blunt. Moviegoers aren't unfamiliar with existential stakes, except that of late we've cordoned them off in the metaphorical, a la the Marvelverse. Oppenheimer hits home because really it's all of us, here and now, who are characters in it. As is noted in the film, we're still near the dawn of the era Oppie helped create. Looking at who's in control of nuclear arsenals these days makes optimism a hard sell. And if things go wrong, there won't be any sequels. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
You're listening to Netroots Radio on netrootsradio.com.
Hello there, Nick Petrichow here, coming to you somewhat unusually on a Thursday. We have departed from our usual schedule to bring you a special report about some work in Nature that has only been published today, along with a few accompanying papers in Science. And it's all about social media. I'm sure that you're familiar with the idea that social media can polarize people with impacts on everything from politics to family gatherings. But how much are these sites really impacting our views? Reporter Adam Levy has been finding out.
From MySpace to TikTok, social media has changed the way we connect with those around us, allowing us to do everything from stay in touch with old friends to form new bonds across the globe. But simultaneously, social media could also divide us. This possibility is known as social media polarization.
The idea mostly is that by using social media, people become either more extreme in the policy attitudes or political preferences that they have, or that they become more judgmental and more stereotyped about the political outgroups that they're not a part of.
This is political scientist Jamie Settle. She and collaborators have a study out in this week's Nature, and there'll be more on that study and the unusual team behind it in a moment. Now, connected to concerns of polarization on social media is the notion of echo chambers. This is the idea that we naturally surround ourselves with like-minded views, which could be exacerbated by social media, meaning that we rarely hear differing opinions. And as social media has become a bigger and bigger part of our lives, many researchers have become concerned that echo chambers and polarization on these platforms could be having profound impacts.
That could not only affect how we communicate on those platforms themselves, but also the attitudes that we develop towards each other and our political preferences. And that could leak then back into the real face-to-face world with implications for the way we vote and even the way that we interact with our fellow citizens.
But the truth is that while there has been plenty of speculation on how widespread echo chambers are and the impact on our views and our actions, such questions have been hard to answer. But now, researchers from Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and independent US researchers, like Jamie, have teamed up to try to provide some solid evidence.
So this was a very exciting collaboration to be a part of, and this project has been more than 3 years in the making.
So what did this collaboration find? Well, the first question the team asked was just how prevalent echo chambers are on the social media platform Facebook.
We were able to use observational data from the entire population of active adult Facebook users. That was about 231 million users. Most people see most of their content from like-minded sources. But at the same time, a much smaller proportion of users get the vast majority of their content from like-minded sources. We think that this idea of the fact that, there's rampant echo chamber problems on social media is overblown. That people, yes, are seeing a lot of content from sources that share their point of view, but it's not the overwhelming majority.
This result gives a sense of the information we receive on Facebook. But what about the effects that this information has on us? Well, the team investigated that too, running a 3-month test with over 20,000 Facebook users during the 2020 US election, where they changed the content that those people received.
And we were able to reduce their exposure to this information from like-minded sources by about 1/3. But it didn't have any of the anticipated effects on changing people's attitudes that are really the driving concern of this echo chamber problem.
So profoundly changing the algorithm and so the content that Facebook users received at this crucial political moment did not profoundly or even measurably alter the attitudes of the participants. This is tough news for those who had thought that such tweaks to social media could heal deep divides in societies. Social and behavioral scientist David Garcia, who wasn't involved in the study, was taken aback by these results.
So first, of course, I was disappointed. So I had more hope for what an algorithm could do on a person's attitudes. But then when I thought more about it and trying to change their attitudes just because the algorithm is different, is a bit of wishful thinking. And we did have this wishful thinking before, and this experiment is showing us that the algorithm only does so much, and solutions that go through the technology alone and only through changing the algorithms are not going to make the society less polarized. We need more than that.
As surprising as these results are, though, David remains impressed by just how robust the study is.
So if you ask me a while ago whether an actual collaboration like this between academics and Facebook was going to be successful and they will actually get to publish something like this, I didn't believe it. I always thought that the company will have an issue with this. I don't know how could this be done better, honestly.
And this collaboration has done a host of other work. Some, Jamie tells me, is still to come later this year. But the team are also publishing studies in the journal Science at the same time as this Nature study.
2 of them are similar experiments in the sense that they changed the algorithm, and that one also didn't have an effect on polarization. So there's 3 possible solutions that didn't work in this case for polarization.
So these studies didn't find ways to reduce polarization, but they have their limitations. For example, the researchers deliberately targeted the 2020 US election for their investigation because of the importance of polarization to such events. But it could be that less political periods yield different results. On top of that, other social media platforms use different algorithms which may have different effects on their users. Plus, focusing on the US may yield unusual results.
It could happen that in a place that is not so polarized, a change in the algorithm could actually have an effect. It's not far-fetched to think that the results could be different in another country.
For both David and Jamie, these results aren't saying that social media algorithms are irrelevant to causing or addressing division in society. Rather, the work indicates that there's still so much we simply don't know about social media's effects, and that healing divides may be a more nuanced task than some previously believed.
And so we're hoping that these findings, which many people will find counterintuitive, will help push the field towards better, clearer definitions of what the problem might be. There's a lot of room for further study in this area to better understand what other changes are possible and what other kinds of changes can you make on the way that users interact with and engage with content on social media that does have the desired effects on their psychology that we hope that it might.
Future work could address a host of questions about social media's impact on our lives, investigating other ways these platforms connect and divide us, or even investigating how interventions could influence the mental health of users. But to answer many such questions requires more collaborations like this one between researchers at social media companies and independent universities. So how can such unusual collaborations become far more usual?
So my first approach will be to have regulations where this is kind of mandatory for a platform. Basically, that the scientists can come with one of these questions and the platform can't really say no. And they have to fulfill a social responsibility the same way as a car company needs to have particular tests to pass, whether they're polluting or not. A social media platform might have to pass particular tests that academics propose. There's so much that can be done with academics and not just inside the company.
That was David Garcia of the University of Konstanz in Germany, and Jamie Settle from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg in the US, talking to Adam Levy. For more on that story, check out the show notes for some links. I'm Nick Petrichow. Thanks for listening.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey, kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Little known fact, a leading cause of death in Texas is Governor Greg Abbott. Yes, by intentional actions and deliberate inactions, Abbott has used his gubernatorial policies to kill thousands of Texans, including his calculated refusal to extend health care to millions of poor Texans, including nearly 1 million children. His intentional denial of water breaks for outdoor workers broiling under this year's 100-degree-plus heat dome. His lethal deregulation of utilities, causing the state power grid to collapse for days in the deep freeze of 2021, with hundreds dying for lack of heat and water. And his shameful prioritizing of gun extremism over the lives of school children. These people are not dying accidentally, but are victims of Abbott's premeditated policies and political ambition. Consider his silly scheme of throwing $9.5 billion of Texas taxpayers' money into the ditch of his highly ballyhooed border security PR show. Grandiosely branded Operation Lone Star, it has posed Generalissimo Abbott as a right-wing border hero. Some hero, he has stretched miles of razor wire underwater in the Rio Grande, slashing the flesh of migrant families and trapping babies and pregnant women in the coils. And Abbott's state troopers have been commanded to shove exhausted and injured refugees back into the river toward Mexico. As one appalled trooper says, "We have stepped over a line into the inhumane." This willful cruelty is made ridiculous by the fact that Abbott's militaristic power play has totally failed to deter migration. After all, these families are fleeing for their lives and future, so he can wrap all of Texas in razor wire and they will still come and find a way in. This is Jim Hightower saying Abbott can kill lots of them, but he can't kill the human spirit.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day that the Hatch Act was enacted. The law was named after Senator Carl Hatch, a Democratic senator from New Mexico. The Hatch Act limits political activities by federal employees. One of the reasons the law was passed was due to allegations of corruption by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a key program of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal plan to put people back to work during the Great Depression. But critics of the WPA alleged that the program was being used as a form of political patronage, and that the jobs were exchanged as a way to secure votes for the Democratic Party. Although an investigation found no conclusive proof of the allegations, Congress decided to act to define what was appropriate political engagement for a federal employee. Except for the president and the vice president, all federal employees and employees of the District of Columbia must follow the Hatch Act guidelines. Under the Act, federal employees cannot use the authority of their job to interfere with an election, They cannot be a candidate to a public office in a partisan election. They cannot participate in political activity while at work or while wearing a government uniform or driving a government vehicle. But the Hatch Act does not completely stop federal employees from participating in our political system. If they are off the clock, federal employees can still attend political rallies, contribute money to candidates, campaign for candidates, and help register voters. Ensuring the individual rights of free speech and elections free of corruption can be a difficult balancing act, especially for the thousands who call Uncle Sam their boss. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the mid-90s under sunny conditions. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows around 60. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. And then sunny tomorrow with highs in the low 90s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated moderate here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 26 parts per million. And that daytime UV index is very high at level 8. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.06 inches. Looks like visibility is up to 10 miles and relative humidity is at 62% and will dry out as we go along during our day. Weather from around the world brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And that's why it's the Weather Underground, unfortunately, is down. And we will not be able to give you the international weather forecast, but we will tomorrow. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Munir Ahmed of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Pakistani's lower house passed a bill that recommends a 3-year prison term for anyone found guilty of disclosing the identity of an intelligence official, a move apparently aimed at stifling criticism of military-backed spy chiefs and agents. The legislation comes amid growing criticism of military and intelligence officers by former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his deputies. It is expected to pass the Senate this week and then go to President Alvi for signing into law, which is merely a formality. Khan was the first politician to publicly disclose the name of some of Pakistani's senior intel officers, saying they were conspiring against him. He even claimed that Major General Fasil Nasir, who works at Inter-Services Intelligence, or ISI, was behind the November 3rd gun attack that wounded Khan when he led a protest march to pressure the government to agree to early elections. One of Khan's supporters was killed in the shooting. The gunman was immediately arrested, and police later released a video of him in custody confessing to the shooting and saying he acted alone. Since then, Khan has alleged that Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, Interior Minister Rana Sanalullah, and Nasir conspired to attack him. Sharif and the military have denied the charges. Yesterday, Tuesday, lawmakers from Sharif's government sent the new legislation to the National Assembly and amended the Secret Act, proposing that anyone who discloses the names of intelligence officers, informers, or sources would face 3 years in prison. The legislation comes days after the National Assembly and Senate passed another bill recommending up to 5 years in prison for both currently serving and retired officers found guilty of taking part in politics or disclosing sensitive information.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Edith M. Lederer of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United States said yesterday, Tuesday, it will put forward a UN Security Council resolution that will authorize Kenya to lead a multinational police force to help combat gangs in Haiti that control much of the capital and are spreading through the Caribbean nation. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield told a news conference at the start of the U.S. presidency of the Council this month that we welcome Kenya's decision to lead the multinational force, and we will be working on a resolution to support that effort. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry sent an urgent appeal last October for the immediate deployment of a specialized armed force in sufficient quantity to stop the gangs. UN Security General Antonio Guterres has been appealing unsuccessfully since then for a lead nation to help restore order to Latin America's most impoverished country. More than 9 months later, Kenya was the first country to positively consider leading a force, offering to send 1,000 police to help train and assist the Haitian National Police to restore normalcy to the country and protect strategic installations. Kenya's foreign ministry said it plans to send a task force to Haiti in the next few weeks to assess operational requirements for the police mission. Thomas Greenfield said the U.S. will work with other council members on a resolution that will give the Kenyans what they require to establish their presence in Haiti. She gave no timetable, but expressed hope that a resolution will be adopted unanimously, as were the last 2 Haiti resolutions. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.